Hello humans. In this video, I use a lot of glue, a mildly dangerous and dodgy table saw setup, and mediocre wood turning skills to make some pretty cool looking pens. And as always, this is all for your viewing pleasure. Let's delve. I used some maple, walnut, oak, and jatoba, and randomly cut them into strips of various widths. I did this at complete random, and note how I am cutting across the grain rather than with the grain. I did this so that the grain can be oriented vertically in the final product. If that actually made sense to you, then I applaud both your vast knowledge of boards and your ability to comprehend poorly explained situations. And if that didn't make any sense to you, that's okay. Just enjoy this mystical, magical movement. After I had cut all of the strips, I laid them all out on my table saw and took some time to divide them into 5 groups that I would glue up separately. I tried to make as much of a random and disorganized pattern as possible, and quickly found that when you put a lot of effort into something being random, it isn't really random anymore. Tristan Pirich once said, "Real randomness requires an infinite amount of information," and I do not have an infinite amount of information, so achieving true randomness was not even a possibility. I tried to use some safety glasses as a glue spreader this week, mainly because safety glasses just sit in my shop and never serve any particular purpose. So I thought I may as well try to see if they were useful for something, and they really aren't. It was incredibly slow and inefficient. I would give it about a 1 out of 10. It was easily the worst glue spreader to date. So instead, I just used both my hands to spread the glue. As expected, this was a far more efficient and enjoyable method of getting this task done. I had to glue these all up separately because I don't own enough clamps to do it all in one go. So rather than showing you 5 separate glue ups, I just used some mystical transitional magic. I decided I was going to be fancy and clean all of the excess glue up with a chisel. And then I realized that being fancy wasn't a good idea. So I decided to be foolish and run them through the planer instead. This is a foolish idea mainly because pieces that are so short tend to get broken into pieces and shot back out, get really bad planer snipe, or get stuck inside the planer. It was also foolish because running this much glue through the planer is apparently bad for the planer knives. After they went through the planer without incident, it was time to cut these pieces into little strips again. This time, I cut them all the same width. The ones here were about 1/4 of an inch thick, but I wanted thinner pieces. I used a fairly dodgy table saw setup that would push the cutoff strip away from the blade so that it didn't fly back up at me or fall into the saw, never to rise again. This time, I cut the pieces with the grain rather than against the grain. This is because this glue up was going to be in a linear fashion. Once again, it was time to lay out all the pieces on the table saw and sort them into their respective groups. This time, I sorted them to a total thickness of about 3/4 of an inch, suitable for a singular pen blank. Most of these I sorted in a specific pattern, but a few of them I did completely randomly. By flipping them over and taking pieces from all the different blocks I had just cut up, I had more than 3 different patterns I could make. For this glue up, I just used my finger again. I glued up the pieces into individual pen blanks. After making sure all the layers were lined up perfectly, I would wrap it in a bit of tape to ensure that it had minimal movement after I put it in the clamps. I stacked several of these mini glue ups into the clamps at one time to save time, money, and food. I just had to be extra careful not to glue them together. And to do this, I just put a layer of masking tape between each one. Nice. Now I think I got about 15 unique pen blanks out of this batch, and this video was primarily focused on the pen blank making, not basic pen turning. but I thought I would make a batch of 4 just to show the complete process from start to finish. It's going to be a little bit rushed just because I really don't feel like talking for 4 minutes straight as I walk you through the basics of pen turning. If you want 4 minutes of me talking while I turn a pen, I did that video 2 weeks ago, so go watch that instead. I drilled a 3/8 inch hole through the center of the blanks, and then I mixed up some fast drying epoxy and glued in the brass tubes. This tube is actually what makes the pen work. All the components reference this tube in the final assembly, and technically you could put the pen together just using the tube and the other pen components. In other words, the wood is just an extra feature to make it look and feel good. Without the wood, it would just be very strangely shaped and likely quite uncomfortable to hold. After the glue had cured, I squared up the ends of the blank using my drill, and then mounted it on the lathe to turn down to its final shape. I've noticed that I've progressed greatly in this aspect of pen making. It took me several hundred pens to finally nail it down, but now I can shape a pen in about 2 to 3 minutes. Whereas it used to take anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes when I first started out. As Mario Andretti once said, "If everything seems under control, you're not going fast enough." Once I got the blank shaped properly, I sanded it all the way from 100 grit to 1200 grit. And then I used a paper towel to apply a finish. The sanding and finishing process is one that is very important to not speed through. Skipping steps and going fast will result in a subpar finish, or even scratches and grooves in the wood underneath the finish. Taking an extra 90 seconds to go slow and get it right is quite worth it. From there, it was just a matter of assembling the pens. As we near the end of this video, thanks for watching. If you are new here, feel free to subscribe if this video brought you knowledge, joy, or happiness. And if you are old here, I would encourage you to give me some feedback on what sort of videos you like the most. Do you like more serious explanations of what is going on, or do you prefer the quotes and random foolishness? What sort of projects would you like to see in the future? Thanks for watching to the end of the video. Here are some various different videos you may enjoy, and until next time, go jump through a table.